Hey everyone, I am sorry that we can't be together today during the testing for sophomores and juniors. So, to keep you in concert with your other Period 5 colleagues and to make it a little easier for me to keep track, I've decided to just record the presentation I would have made for you this morning. So, hopefully, you're able to follow along and get something out of it. The first thing I would note is that you're going to go to classwork. You're going to access the background notes on Camus and Writing Degree 0. And you're also going to have open while you're watching this screencast. So you might want to hit pause if it's not open yet. The background notes work along document. So in this document, you've seen this before, we have 6 different questions that I'm hoping you will be able to answer as a result of viewing the screencast, and that you'll be able to just immediately hit submit on those. This is about writing and thinking and connecting those thoughts as you're hearing them expounded upon by me. If you would like, it's always a good idea to just look at, we're going to be talking about Camus' early life. We're going to be talking a little bit about his biography potentially as connected, record some details about Camus' literary endeavors that strike you as interesting, some of the thematic focus areas, similar to like what we did with Kafka. But here is where we're going to expand things and make it a little bit different. And that is, we're going to introduce a concept that is definitely college level, but you've impressed me so much recently with your response to literary theory and all of that pinwheel debate, schools of thought stuff that we've been doing, that I feel like we're on a roll, an intellectual roll, and I want to keep pushing you a little bit. So we're going to be talking about a very high-level concept called Writing Degree 0. It was put forward by a French structuralist theorist, which sounds very fancy, but it means a literary critic who looks very much at the level of language. And he is going to bring to light, I think, something very interesting about this text that maybe you've noticed but not been able to put your finger on, or at least articulate in this way. So by the end of this slideshow, you will be able to explain probably why you had a certain feeling when you were reading The Stranger. And then we will wrap it up with question 6 about the text. Okay, so you're taking background notes. I'm talking to you a little bit about Camus, and hopefully we're learning quite a bit this morning, despite the fact that we're not together. Sound good? All right, so let's do this. Let me see if I can get this forward. They changed a little bit on the... All right, so here we go. Albert Camus, you see him pictured there, and we are going to talk a little bit about his early years. So Albert Camus has a lot of different titles on his resume. First thing I want you to notice is that he is French Algerian. So I should have pulled up a map here of Algeria, which is in northern Africa. So France, being not too far from this in terms of geography, colonized Algeria. And so here we have a writer who writes in French, who is French Algerian. He's a journalist. He's a playwright. He's a novelist. He's a philosopher. And he won the Nobel Prize for his works. He's a Nobel laureate. He is highly regarded and very well respected for his different endeavors in writing. He was born November 7th in 1913. So again, like with Kafka, we have this experience, although he was a child during World War I. We have a connection here to that great atrocity, that global atrocity. His dad, Albert Camus' father, was killed in World War I when Camus was less than a year old. So here we have a gentleman who has grown up without a father figure, who's grown up without his dad. So that's got to be, kind of a horrible thing. About the only thing Camus learned about his father, because he had no direct access to a lot of the stories. His mom didn't provide many of the stories. But the only thing he learned once about his dad was that after Witnessing a public execution, so death penalty, the dad became violently ill, like vomiting, just disgusted by this. And this anecdote about capital punishment is something that seemed to influence the author's own opposition, lifelong opposition to the death penalty. Okay, a little more about his early years. He was raised in a cramped, poor apartment, no bathroom, no electricity or running water. So I think many times we tend to think of authors as sort of this privileged elite class. No, 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 no. And think of the time period and Northern Africa and all of that as well. But in a very poor, impoverished apartment, no real facilities, no running water, no electricity. And this would be the ground or the background against which Camus would become a man. During high school, he became an avid reader. So it wasn't immediate that he showed interest in literature and writing. But in high school, he became an avid reader and developed his interests in literature, art, theater, and film as well. In college and after, he became interested in works with left-wing political themes. So we're talking in the realm of, democracy, socialism, as we continue to further travel left on the political spectrum. Very democratic, idealistic kind of feeling to his work. All right. So some of his literary contributions. Let's just talk about like what he's well known for. His most famous work is probably The Stranger. And just look at the date of publication on that, 1942. All right. So what's going on in 1942? Again, here we are now in a World War II. And he publishes The Stranger right in the midst of that. He's also very well known for a work called The Plague and also The Fall. And these are all novels. He has a book called The Rebel and a text called Resistance, Rebellion, and Death, which sounds quite intense. And I really did enjoy that one. Resistance, Rebellion, and Death. And those are nonfiction works, but those are the works for which he's most well known. Here's the thing that you have to remember about Camus, and you may like this about him and you may not, and either way you should know that this is in play. He's philosophical. He is philosophical in the sense that, here's how we define this, okay? He's conceived his own distinctive and original worldview. A philosopher is going to do that. How do they perceive the world? They're going to try to articulate that. Definitely, you will see, if you haven't already figured out, Camus is working hard to conceive his own original worldview. That's a very modernist kind of thing to try to do. The second part of that is that he seeks to convey that view through images, fictional events, and dramatic representation rather than critical analysis and direct discourse. So it's irony to me that to speak his greatest truths about human existence, Camus turns to fiction. Say that again. So to explore truth of human condition, he is turning to fiction, as opposed to his nonfiction works where he's exploring that philosophical side as well. He does it probably best and most effectively when he's able to use more creative means. Okay. So themes and ideas to watch for in Camus. The first is the absurd. And notice the capital A on that word, absurd. Think about what you think of when someone says, oh my gosh, this is so absurd, right? It's usually ridiculous. And so when we talk about the absurd in a philosophical sense with the capital A, it's referencing this felt sense of disharmony, a fundamental, like at the core disharmony in our existence. There's something that will never be peaceful entirely as a human being, that there is some kind of core discord at the middle of what we feel, what we think, what we do. Another idea to watch for is revolt. And revolt meaning like to stand up against the absurd. So if the universe is crazy, you want to try to defy that, right? If the universe is not able to be rational all the time, you want to try to create some rationality. Most of us do. Another notion to watch for in Camus is the notion of the outsider. So the outsider, literally, l'étranger, the outsider, the stranger, the outsider. Characters who can observe everything, even their own behavior, from an outside perspective. It's as if they could just watch a film of themselves and be able to describe what's going on. They're not even within their own skin in so many ways. The outsider. More ideas are guilt and innocence. So we know that as we head into part 2 of The Stranger, that we have a trial. A trial is going to ensue after Marceau kills the Arab on the beach that day. And so there are questions of guilt and innocence. There's also questions about Christianity versus paganism or atheism, and that comes into play quite a bit. There are questions about suicide, and there are also questions about the death penalty and its morality and appropriateness as jurisprudence. All right. I want you to also look over here at this guy, because I do think he comes into play with Camus. That's Sisyphus rolling the rock up a hill, right? In the mythological story, Sisyphus keeps rolling the rock up all day. He labors to get that rock up the hill, and then he finally gets it up there, and guess what? It rolls right back down. And the next day he endeavors to push that rock back up the hill, and he gets it all the way to the top, and then the damn thing rolls right back down again. Camus uses this as a metaphor for the human condition. We are all Sisyphus, constantly pushing a rock up a hill and constantly watching it roll back down again, never achieving lasting success. And I do think you can probably access some of that as seniors. Just recall how you started pushing that rock up the hill in 9th grade. And now you are at the pinnacle. You are at the top. Oh my gosh, it's time to celebrate graduation, which we will. And then that rock's going to roll right back on down, and you are going to find yourself as a freshman or as the rookie or as the new recruit, and you are going to be starting all over again. And that's sort of the beauty and the frustration of life, right? That's what happens. And Camus is very much into the existential questions like that. And so we'll be touching on that some more. But there's a good old Sisyphus pushing that rock up the hill. And here comes a new concept, okay? And I want you to just think about math, right? And I was pretty good at math, and I left Coventry High School thinking I was going into medicine. I enjoyed physics and all that kind of stuff. So if we are at degree 0, right, then we know we are in a point of neutrality, right? This is 90 degrees, and we can go over to 180. We can go all the way around to 360. But when we're at 0 degrees, right, we are at a point of neutrality. And here's the cool thing. And if you can pick this up, I'm serious, you are thinking at a college level. And you should be darn proud of yourselves. And if you can't, well, then that's why it's called school. And that's why we're going to keep working on it until we can understand it. Okay. But remember that image of degree 0, right? When you're at degree 0, you are neutral. A man named Roland Barthes, he's a French scholar, came up with, he's known for studying the history of language, literally looking at the level of language and author styles and how they convey their messages. He suggests that every problem we have in understanding anything is a problem of language. If we could just somehow perfect our use of language and our understanding of language, we would be in so much better place. He develops the concept called writing degree 0 after he reads works by writers like Sartre and Camus. So he says, oh my gosh, these guys, they're doing something different. They're doing something different. And a modernist, remember, we said a month ago when we introduced this stuff, that the modernist is seeking for new ground here, right? And Roland Barthes recognizes that there's some effort to write degree 0. And here's what it means. It's writing degree 0 is an attempt to create a neutral literary style deprived of all traditional markers that heralds an encounter with language as such, while stressing the gap between language and the world. What does that mean, Miss Boyle? It's an attempt to create a neutral literary style that deprives us of all the traditional markers that we're used to reading in a story. Those markers tell us who to root for and who to not like and how to feel and how to react, right? And those come from descriptions, beautiful descriptions in the writing that make us feel a certain way about a character or feel a certain feeling in the moment, react with anger or with happiness when Beatrice and Benedict get married, right? We have descriptors in those traditional texts. Here, Camus taking them away. He's not telling us to hate Marceau. He's not telling us to like Marceau. He's not telling us to think that he's crazy or to think that he's the most sane person in the world. He is trying to just give us a story, just the facts, if you will, of this fictional story, and not tell us who to root for or what to think. He wants this text to read us as much as we read it. Because this kind of neutral style, it doesn't have adjectives, it doesn't have adverbs, it doesn't do a lot of telling us how to think or feel. This style creates a distance from which the audience must judge and understand instead of being passive and just letting the author do all the work, right? It's kind of like the comparison of watching a film versus reading the book. Only here you read the book and then that's taken another step. Reading a traditional book is like watching a film compared to reading a text in degree zero style. The reader has to be active. If you plug out for a few pages on this book, you might find it's difficult to plug back in because the text is so neutral that, he's trying to make you do that work. So he's taking out everything. So instead of saying, Marceau is terrible for the way he treats his mother, he's instead going to just tell you what happens with his mother, right? In a very factual, matter-of-fact way. He's not going to cue you with those descriptors. He's not. He's going to hold that back. And Roland Barthes is the one who's saying, wow, that's kind of like trying to write degree zero. Okay? So here's where you're going to show your understanding. Okay, what might we add to amp up the narrative judgment or control of the reader's response? So once you hit submit on these notes, okay, I want you to go in classwork to the Writing Degree 90 exercise. And you're going to see that I've given you the first few lines of The Stranger. And what I want you to do is take that very neutral beginning of the story. It's so matter of fact. Mama died today, or was it yesterday? Can't be sure, right? And I want you to put adjectives and adverbs that cue us how to feel. So in that moment, how is Marceau feeling? What kinds of judgments are we having here when this is happening? So just think about how radically different it would sound if you translate maman, which is the French maman. What if you changed it to mother? What if you changed it to mom or mommy or dearest mother, dearest mom? It would change the way we understand that moment of getting the news that your mom has passed away. Goodness forbid we ever get that news, right? But that is going to change it radically. I want you to do that. I want you to put all those traditional markers back in and show me you can do that in that Writing Degree 90 exercise. So you're showing me you understand this concept by doing that. All right. So you can do that, get that done, hit submit, and I will check your progress. And then the last thing, obviously, is we need to finish reading The Stranger, and we need to do questions 9 through 13 for the next time I see you on Thursday. So you have plenty to do, and I'm going to let you get to it and stop talking, okay? Good luck. Reach out if you need anything, and hang in there with this. This is challenging stuff, but you should really feel good if you can get this concept. Got it? Okay, good.